everybody sees me drowning, but nobody's throwing out the life jacket. And it's like, do I go save myself or do I keep asking for help? Hi, everybody. Welcome back to A Sista Love Podcast. And today we have a beautiful guest. Her name is Deborah Feathers. And you know how I am. I don't like to tell people stories. I'm here to let them tell their stories. So, Deborah, can you please introduce yourself to the listeners?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me today, Rose. My name is Deborah Feathers, as she said, and I am a trauma-informed clinician, coach, and soon-to-be registered married and family therapist intern. That's a word salad there. I'm currently transitioning into full-time private practice. So my work focuses primarily on helping people understand how trauma impacts their emotions and their relationships, their nervous systems, so they can move out of survival mode and into deeper emotional regulation, self-trust, healthier connections. So alongside my clinical training, I have a strong background in coaching. So I'm a 7-time credentialed coach. I'm trained in modalities like life coaching, mindset coaching, emotional freedom techniques, EFT, neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, hypnosis, and time techniques. And they all focus basically on helping people release emotional imprints from past experiences and shift longstanding belief systems. Those approaches gave me a deep understanding of how mindset and behavior and the nervous system interact in the healing process. And clinically, I've worked in both community mental health and private practice settings as a student therapist. So supporting individuals and families with navigating trauma, anxiety, depression, relational patterns, and the difference between, I would say, early life experiences and those early relational patterns. So community mental health especially has shaped how I see healing, because you witness how trauma, systemic stress, and relational wounds show up in everyday life, and how important compassionate trauma-informed care really is. Well, my work and insights.
That's a lot.
Yes.
Oh, that's a lot. That's a lot.
I can slow down.
Yeah. No, it's okay. No, it's a lot of information. That means you have a lot of resources and a lot of knowledge to give to the listeners. So that's awesome, because you have so much history and so much experience around it. So they know that what you're talking about today is definitely is going to help them, because you definitely have the experience to guide them towards the direction that they really need to go. So can you please go in a little bit on what got you started into this field and your story around your trauma and your experiences that you had that you used to help you in your life?
Absolutely. So my connection is both deeply personal and professional as well. So I didn't enter the field of mental health just through textbooks and training. So that might have made things easier in some aspects. Definitely have lived through traumatic experiences. So my trauma really began when I was about 15 years old. Of course, there's different things we go through, before then, and that I've gone through before then, but I experienced significant medical trauma and chronic health issues around that time. At that age, that's when your world's supposed to be like expanding, and you're supposed to be building friendships, identity, independence, those kinds of things. But instead, I found myself navigating hospitals and medical procedures and the uncertainty of whether I was going to live or not, and feeling safe in my body, and that unpredictability. So that medical trauma just doesn't impact your body, but it changes the relationship you have with your body and your sense of safety and relationships with systems and authority figures. So that was kind of my introduction there. And then later in life, I experienced sexual assault. That was a big impact on my experience with trauma. So that kind of overwhelms your nervous system when you go through something like that. Carrying anxiety, depression, PTSD, all of those things, they have their impact. And when your nervous system has been through that much, kind of operate in survival mode. being that age, early teens, late teens, early 20s, I didn't really have the language for what I was going through, which I don't think a lot of people do when you go through this stuff.
100%. Especially when you go through things. And did you talk to anyone about it, or did you just go through it by yourself?
At first, I didn't talk to anyone about it. I kind of bottled it up for many years and said I didn't need help, didn't believe in help, didn't think that therapy was something that was for me or for, I don't want to say not for anyone, but I was one of those teenagers that was just like, therapy is BS, we'll say.
I understand the purpose of it. Like, I don't
Yes.
like a lot of people. I explain to the listeners all the time, like a lot of people think therapy is just sitting in this chair and just talking to a therapist, but when it comes to trauma, it's different types of therapy and different types of things that we can do to help us with our trauma and then things that we experience. And a lot of people think therapy is just one avenue, and that's talk therapy. And it's just so bigger, so much more than that. And that's another reason for this podcast, to bring awareness to all the other things that we could do to help us do, because we're so used to like stereotypical ways of therapy, and it's just not that. And from your background, it seemed like you're into all different avenues of therapy.
Absolutely. And, avenue is not the only way. Like you said, there's so many different ways, and these different ways work for different people. And we talk now about decolonizing therapy, because Western psychology was developed for the white man. And now we have to go back and kind of redo all that, because it's not going to work for everybody.
So you said that you have experienced like sexual assault, and did the PTSD come from the sexual assault, or did it happen more when it's like the medical, or was it like both of them combined together?
Absolutely both. That's kind of where we have the distinction between PTSD and what we call complex PTSD, where complex PTSD is the occurrence of multiple traumatic events over time, kind of compounding and becoming a different animal. And that's kind of where I fall.
Yeah, me too. Complex PTSD is definitely the boat that I'm in, because people's like, so what was that, especially that one event that happened? That's like my whole life been like that. I had the child trauma. I had trauma when I was a kid. I had trauma as an adult. I had trauma like throughout my whole life, from watching my dad abuse my mom. It started young, and then transitioning to me being sexual assaulted as a child, and then transitioning into like me being in an abusive relationship, and then translation into me like transmitting my trauma into my kids' life. It's just like event after event after event after event. It's just like, how do you deal with that when you have like a complex PTSD?
How do you deal with that? Because that's the main crux of complex PTSD, because number one, it's not even recognized by the DSM, and that's a big issue. So a lot of people can't diagnose it for insurance. And then you have the issue of deciphering what's coming from where. Everything, you have all these different events that have compounded over time, and now it just becomes this amalgamation of stuff that it overwhelms the system. And I like to use what I call the burnt toast analogy, which is your amygdala, this little part of your brain, is kind of like the alarm system. And now it's firing all the time, saying there's danger there. It's kind of like the little smoke alarm that's going off saying the house is on fire all the time because of everything that you've been through. When really it's just burnt toast for certain situations. And when we talk about emotional regulation, now we're looking at what is going on in the moment and whether you are in danger, and how do you differentiate between burnt toast and the house is on fire when you've been through all of these different things.
Exactly. And that's what I wanted to get into next, actually talking about like the emotional regulation and what that looks like, and why it's so complicated when someone experiences like PTSD or have experienced so much trauma in their life. Like, how do we first identify our emotions, identify if they're real or not in this process of healing ourselves? Because like our emotions play like the biggest role in allowing us to heal from these things that we experience and identifying if they're real or not, or how to manage them. I don't think our emotions is real. That's not what I mean by that, but like how to deal with them and let them know if they're indicating something wrong or right. You know what I'm saying? Because we can feel something, but doesn't differentiate. That is what we're actually going through, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. And I think that's a great question. And I think also we need to get clear on what emotional regulation actually is. Because I don't want to say it's become a bit of a buzzword lately, but every coach, therapist, everyone within the mental health field is saying, oh, emotional regulation this, emotional regulation that. And it's like, okay, but what actually is emotional regulation? And it's different things to different people. But to be clear on what it is, it's noticing, process, responding to emotions in a way that keep you connected to yourself. So rather than feeling completely overwhelmed by them or shut down by them, you go through this process.
I agree with that. I think emotional regulation for me is like the same thing, just being able to identify what I'm actually going through. This is sadness, right? Because we have all these emotions, but people like to categorize all our emotions to one. Sadness, it's like they'll use it very vague, like, oh, I'm sad right now. But it could be like, people think like you could be indifference, and indifference can feel like sadness, right? And anger, you could be mad, and anger, it feels the same thing. Like all these emotions that we make them very broad. So being able to identify the different varieties of emotions that I'm going through, right? And then understanding what that actually feels like, right? And what that actually means in that moment is more for like emotional regulation for me. Like, okay, I feel indifferent, but why am I feeling indifference at this moment? You know what I'm saying? And then understanding how to navigate that feeling to make me content in the moment.
Absolutely.
Like, because I don't know how to explain it, but like a lot of emotions are very strong and very complex. And like when you're going through trauma, it seemed like you're going through a roller coaster of emotions in one moment. You can have 10 emotions in 5 seconds and like, which one do I sit with? Which one do I identify? Which one do I conquer at this moment? And if you have any insight on that, like how, if we're going through this roller coaster of emotions and everything is like piling up and you're feeling overwhelmed, like how, like what are some things that you could do, or like things that people can just like, I don't know how to say it, but I think you kind of understand how things that people can identify or do when they're going through that roller coaster or that feeling of overwhelm.
I think later we'll get to an exercise that will help with this. But what I always break out is the feelings wheel. And it sounds kind of silly, the feelings wheel, but there are feelings beneath feelings that will help you to kind of identify where you're at. That will help you identify feelings that you didn't even know were there. And when I think about feelings, I also think about the anger iceberg, where it's typically, you'll see anger is the tip of the iceberg, and then beneath it is all the other feelings that you could be feeling with anger. But they do this for anger, but there's really, all emotions could be like this, where you have one feeling that's the tip of the iceberg and everything else is all of these below. So when it comes to identifying that, I say first grounding exercises, and we'll go through that later, but go through the grounding exercise. And once you are grounded, then start asking yourself questions. What am I really feeling right now? And if you can't get anywhere with that, it's hard to say when it's something to do in the moment and not something to do in therapy.
To be honest, your pause is kind of like the best way to regulate, though. Like that pause gives you time to process too.
That's really a good point. The pause to think, to say, is this the burnt toast or is the house on fire?
Yeah.
The distinction between the two, the distinction between where is it coming from, going back to the earliest memory that you have felt this feeling, that you have felt. Give me a feeling or an example of something that could be going on, or something that you felt, or something just out there.
Well, something recently, I was just having a conversation with my kids yesterday. We had family meeting, and I feel like I am unappreciative, and like being used or like overwhelmed, and my life is so complicated. And it's like everybody sees me drowning, but nobody's throwing out the life jacket. And it's like, do I go save myself or do I keep asking for help? You know what I'm saying? So that's like the biggest thing that I'm asking. Like, what do you do when you keep asking people to help you and support you and to help you in your process? And then as you help asking them, they're just looking at you like, okay, what do you want me to do about it? And now you're stuck with all these feelings like, okay, the process of healing says find your support, right? These people around you are supposed to support you. They're supposed to love you. They're supposed to help you in this process where you need help. And now that you're reaching out for them, like the people that you thought were supposed to support you is not there. And now you're stuck in this place. It's like, okay, I can go find other people to support me, but these are the people that's here now. And I need these people to support me. What do you do then? Like, you're stuck. And like, I kind of like stuck in this overwhelmed feeling because these are the people that live in my household. These are the people that I need to help me. These are the people that I need. It's not that I can go out and find other people. Those are not the people that can help me in this situation. I need them. And they don't want to. So stuck between a rock and a hard place. And that felt overwhelming. You feel used, feel like I don't know what to do with that. Kind of like I said, different, like indifferent. Like sad, but indifferent too.
Something you said that really stuck out to me was, do I save myself or you want to fill in the blank for me?
Oh, do I keep asking for help?
Mm-hmm. So you're asking for help and it's not getting you anywhere.
No.
I feel like that was a powerful statement there. Do I save myself or do I keep asking for help? Just sitting with that for a second. That's like, do I keep saving myself or do I ask for help? I feel a lot of weight. When you feel that weight, can you go back to a time when you first felt this, let's say, need to ask for help or this need to save yourself?
I've been saving myself.
And if this is too far,
I've been saving myself since I was little. Like I said in the beginning, like
trauma history, I can imagine.
Yeah, my dad and my mom been in an abusive relationship since we've been born. And she couldn't be there for us. She couldn't be there for us because she could barely be there for herself. So I've been mama bear since I could be mama bear, if that makes sense. Like with my siblings and everything, I take care of everybody. Even though I'm not the oldest, I am the middle child. I am the third oldest. But somehow, some way, the weight got put on my shoulders. And I've been taking care of the family forever. Like, I've been the most responsible one. I've been taking care, even to this day, I still take care of my mom, her and my dad. My dad died. So I took over the responsibility of leading the family. So I've been mama bear forever. I've been taking care of everything since I've been young.
Do you have a choice back then?
No. And exactly. It just continued into adulthood. So it's like, it's an instinct for me.
Relational patterns.
Just to do it. But I'm in my process, like I tell everybody, like I'm not healed, I'm still healing. That's why I'm doing the podcast here. I learned things that I know that I can't continue to do this. I can't continue to be everything to everybody and be nothing to myself. And I know the process of me taking things off my shoulders is to ask for help. But when that help is not, when you're asking for help and that help is not being given, it's like, what do I do here? I know these are things that if I continue to do it, I'm going to get overwhelmed and I'm going to end up physically not able because, again, like we know, emotions translate into our physical body. And if I keep sitting with these emotions and I keep allowing these things to happen, my physical body is going to shut down and I'm not going to be useful to nobody, including myself. So that's where I'm like stuck in between a rock and a hard place. I know what's supposed to be done, but when it's time to do the things and then the external things is not happening the way it needs to do, like, what do I do?
You have been through a lot.
Yes.
And that's the understatement of the century.
Understatement.
Of course. And then when you look at back then, you didn't have the choice to say, I'm not doing this. It was survival.
Yes.
And now you have this choice, which is a beautiful thing. But the choice that you have is not really a choice.
Yeah. Exactly.
So what feeling does that bring you back to?
Being stuck, being, yeah, just
Powerless?
powerless. Yes, stuck and powerless and just like out of control. Another thing I do, I have the control issues because I know there's a lot of things that happened to me that was out of my control. So I try to stay in control as much as I can. And it's like, this is one thing that I can't control. And it becomes
Me too.
very overwhelming because I'm not trying to control other individuals, but I want harmony. It's some type of peace or harmony that's going to be sustainable for everybody, not one or two people in the household.
That's something I can relate to on so many levels. I mean, the second I got out of the hospital, it was, I was organizing, even just starting with something small. I was organizing everything from this color to this color. Shoes were like this, clothes were like this. I was starting with the little things, and then everything else, it just spread. So I get that. Bringing you back to that feeling of stuckness and powerlessness. Support system is great, but it's not accessible to everyone. And we like to pretend that it is in therapy. Or I don't want to say therapists in general like to pretend that it is, but I was doing a training yesterday and we were talking about domestic violence and, lean on your support system. Not everyone has it. It's not that simple. How do you utilize your internal, I want to say like tools, support? How do you utilize your own internal toolbox?
Well, the thing that I do most is when I get very overwhelmed and things like that, I write it down. I have like 10,000. I can't even say, I probably got more, like a whole bookshelf full of journals and everything. I have to write it down. I have to get it out. I have to release it some way, somehow. I cry a lot too, but I cry to get the emotions out my body. So I don't like to hold on to them. But I used to not cry, I swear, up until my father died about maybe, his birthday just passed. That's crazy. His birthday just passed on Saturday. Up until my dad died my daughter is 9. So about 10 years ago, I didn't cry. I don't know, something about him dying, the tears came. And I've been able to cry since then. But up until that moment, I didn't cry. I held in all my emotions. So now it's like, I can't stop freaking crying. So I'm about to start crying right now. The tears just come out of nowhere. Could be like my body just holding on to them. Like, oh, it's our turn now. So I cry a lot and I write a lot. So I do a lot of writing and crying.
You think that's your form of emotional regulation?
Yeah.
That's your
music. I listen to a lot of music too.
The music.
Yeah, dancing. If I want to switch my mood, it depends on the type of music. Whatever mood I want to be in, I'll put that music on it. And it would turn me, it would channel me into that emotion that I want to experience.
I think that's where the hard part comes, is that there's what's within our locus of control and what's out of our locus of control. And we can't control other thoughts, feelings, actions, and all that. But we can control what we do. So taking care of ourselves, dancing, and crying, being with those emotions, and then letting them go when it's right. Sometimes that's maybe not what's the end goal or what's going to be the end result, but it's what's right for the time, for the season.
Oh, I agree. No, I totally agree. Yeah, for right now, that is going to have to work for me. It's been working. So even though I do be feeling stuck in overwhelm, it doesn't last as long as it used to, because I'm learning how to move through it faster in that process. Like the process, it helps me to move fast through it. Because if I don't do nothing with it, then I will stay stuck. But if I utilize one of those 3 things, it will last maybe 30, 45 minutes at the most. The longest I ever got maybe was like one day, and that was when something really big happened. It's like 24 hours. I had to like take a nap. Yeah, I'm gonna have to shut down for this day, but that was like something heavy on me. So outside of that, maybe an hour, 45 minutes. It'll take me to process and to regulate myself back and then keep it moving back into life.
Back into life.
Yeah. Back to life. Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a good sentiment.
Yeah. Well, back on topic, we kind of like jumped to the left.
You didn't want to turn it into a therapy session.
I know, right? But that's good because I love things like this. Like this happens all the time because I got a lot of stuff that I'm dealing with. And when I get somebody on the podcast that can help me, I definitely just be like, I know I'm not paying for this session, but hey, can you help me? Like, I do it all the time. It's good for the listeners too, because they might be experiencing some of the same things. So like, it's like insight into things that they might be going through too. So that's that's what we're about to move into now, the live demonstration, because this is the purpose. I added this part into the podcast so they can have something they can actually use at home. It's just not a lot of information, because we can read a book and get this information, right? We can we can Google a lot of this information, but if we don't know what to do with this information or how to apply it to our life, what purpose is this information? Like, I read so many books, I did so many courses, but nobody actually tells me what to do with this information or how to apply it in my life. So that is like the main purpose of this podcast. Is like, yes, I have this information, but now what's next, right? And that having a lot of information cause overwhelm and overstimulation, because yes, I have all this information, but I don't know what to do with it, right? Mm-hmm. And also not having a safe environment to do anything with it. Like I was saying on my podcast one of my solo podcasts, I could teach somebody how to ride a bike, but if you put them in a room with a bike, how good is that, right? You need to be outside in an environment where you can actually learn and practice how to ride a bike. You can't be in a 5x7 room with a bike and think you're going to learn how to properly ride it.
I might steal that from you. I'll credit you, but I might steal that from you. I might use that in session.
So kind of this is what that podcast is, right? So giving somebody the right environment and resources to practice how the things that we are learning. So that's where I'm going to hand that over to you and ask you to demonstrate one emotional regulation exercise that you use with one of your clients that can help someone that's going through like overwhelm or feeling stuck. So I'll hand that over to you.
I can do this one of two ways. I can just go through it, or I can do it with you. What would you prefer?
Well, I think it's best if you have me do it and I can demonstrate it.
Perfect. Okay, so what we're going to do is something called orienting to the present. Okay. And the listeners can try this with us. So if you're listening, just take a moment and look around the space you're in. You don't have to change anything. Just notice what's there. Just take a moment. See if you can quietly name 3 things you can see around you.
You want me to name it, or you want me to just keep it quiet?
You can name it, sure.
Okay. I see a desk, a bookshelf, and my tripod.
Okay. Now notice 2 things you can hear.
I can hear the people outside the studio talking when they should be quiet. I can hear... I can hear the computer buzzing.
And then bring your attention to one place in your body that feels neutral or supported. Maybe your feet on the ground, your back against the chair, hands resting in your lap.
My hand on my phone.
Okay. What this does is it helps your nervous system reorient to the present moment. So instead of staying locked in that kind of alarm state that we talked about earlier, I would say like when trauma or stress activates the body, the nervous system can start reacting as if something dangerous is happening. So again, burnt toast analogy. So orienting helps remind the body I'm actually here and in the moment, and I can look around and see where I am. This is great for like dissociation and things like that. And like I have said before, anyone is not going to be the thing for everyone else. So not every technique works for every nervous system. Something that works for one person may not resonate for someone else, but that's the beauty of it. There's so many different regulation tools out there. And I know in my practice and for many other coaches, therapists, if one doesn't work, you try something else and you find what works for you.
I totally agree. It's going to be, that's why like in my Facebook group, I have a tool book, like a tool bag where everything that I learned or something, different resources, I literally just put it in there. And I literally just make a worksheet for it and I'll add it to the resource center. And so that they can just try whatever works. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, try something else. Just like having those resources for you, because everything, like you said, everything's not going to work for everybody else. Everybody think like the biggest thing, like I explain to people like, yes, I've been through domestic violence, but my domestic violence is not the same domestic violence as you experience, right? So what worked for me going through and regulating myself and think it might not work for you. And totally understandable, because yes, domestic violence, yes, is that, but it's not the same experiences. So everything is not going to work for everybody. So we have to learn to find what's worked for us. That's why it's like healing is never just it's not a straight avenue. It's like, it's a journey. It's everybody's own individual journey based on what they experience. And also it's about like, yeah, it's foundational steps where I try to teach my listeners, even though I have these foundational steps, inside of each step is your own journey you have to follow. Like I don't know, like with me, like the 3 steps that I try to tell my listeners to do is like, step 1 is pretty much like self-awareness and exceptions and stuff like that, like becoming aware of what you're going through and figuring out what it is that you're actually experiencing, right? And first, ultimately being willing and able, right? Because a lot of people think like, oh, healing start with awareness, but to me, it starts with willing. We have to be willing to be able or willing to want to do anything with the information that we find, right? We can have all the information in front of us, but if we're not willing to do anything with it, what is the purpose of it? So I want people to know, like, we have to start with the willingness. And then after you're willing and able, now you find all this information. Now, after we find this information, what do we do next, right? We have to feel safe within ourselves to practice the information that we discovered, right? So after we feel safe, then we can now apply all the things that we have learned and we start practicing. And then now we get to implement that into our life. And as we implement it in our life, we have to now separate ourselves from what was and what is. And as we move into what is, we get to find who we are becoming. And that's where we get to blossom into the part of, now I have deal with all these things that I experienced. Now I get to find who I am. And it's like my 3-step things that I do is like willingness and awareness, safety and stabilizing. Like you feel safe, but now you have to stabilize the safetyness so that it won't keep happening, right? And then finding who you are, becoming the new version of you. And then inside each one of those steps, we still have to find our own journey. You know what I'm saying? Because what feels safe for me might not feel safe for you. You know, what I'm willing to do and something that you might not be willing to do. You know what I'm saying? And who I am becoming is something totally different than who you are becoming. So what I would need for me to become this person that I want to become may not be the same tools and skills that you need to accomplish. So inside each, that's why I have that resource center, because inside each one of these steps, everybody's journey is definitely different.
I couldn't agree more with you. I couldn't agree more.
Okay, as we come to the end of this episode, would you like to give the listeners any advice or say anything to them before we close out?
I would love to. There's so much that could be said, but I think you touched on a lot of things in your last statement there. And I just want people to know that there is help out there. You know, no matter where you go, there is going to be help out there. And I think the main message, if anyone wants, just one takeaway from anything that I've said today is that if there's not one thing that works for you, there is another out there that works for you. So I see all the time on social media, therapy didn't work for me, coaching didn't work for me, et cetera, didn't work for me. Try again. Healing is out there. And like you said, healing is not linear. It's all over the place. It's going to take time. And a lot of clients of mine have put a time frame on themselves as to, well, I should be better now. It's been 2 months. So it's, it takes time, but it's out there. Help is there. And that's my message.
Well, can you tell the listeners a little bit more about where to find you at, your social medias, your everything. And if you have that free resource or a link that they can follow or come find you at, you can tell them all about that too.
Yes, my Instagram is Deborah, Deborah_Feathers, as in bird feathers. And then my website is deborahfeathers.mycanvasite.com. Well, I'll have to verify that because that's a mouthful.
It will be in the show notes. Yeah.
It'll be in the notes.
Yeah.
But you can find me there. And I'll have additional resources. If I have any, like the regulation thing we went through today, I can send that over to Rose and she can put that on the site if she would like. Whatever is fine.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. And I truly appreciate you. And the conversation was awesome. I hope you guys really got something from it. If you did, please let us know in the comments. And please don't forget to join our Facebook group, Sister Let's Heal Together. And we'll see you next time. Sign out, your sister love. Bye.